Average at Best Cornhole. We're back again with another compare video. Today we got goated bag code Notorious, and then we got Logic Cornhole Elements. So these bags, pretty much, I mean, there's a lot of similarities there. You know, they're both from a smaller company. They both have the same slow side, but then you get different fast sides, different fills, and they play a little different. So we're going to get into that for you.
All right, speeds on these, and we'll start with the similarities, and that's going to be the slow side. Same slow side material, rated at a 5, which, 5 is a good number for that. Sometimes we think this material plays a touch faster, but your conditions, may vary with that. The difference that we start seeing right away, though, is going to be on the fast side. With the Logic Elements, we're looking at a much slower fast side, rated at a 7, and then the Notorious is that, standard kind of 9 fast side material.
Yeah, the 7's cool, too, because flip it over, you're not worried about flying off the back, a little bit more confidence when you're doing a push shot and whatnot. And actually, when roll bags were first created with OG carpet back in the day, they always put 7 sides on it because I think once it started to roll, it helped stick and get it to tumble. So that's a neat factor about the Element. In those materials, they both do have that clone hybrid. We call this one the clone hybrid because it looks the most like the R carpet, but it's not. It was first found on the Guardian. The fast side's Notorious. Now it's got that common 9-speed fast side that everybody's familiar with. The Element with that 7-speed fast side. So the thing about that is if you do play in humid conditions or whatnot, it's going to slow down with humidity. So when this clone hybrid doesn't really slow down and they're still sliding up the board real good, you flip the bag over and you actually use that fast side as your block.
All right, template on these, and that's a quick comparison that they're pretty identical. There's not a big difference. They're in that median template range, and they both have that a little bit thicker, fuller hand feel to them.
And that leads us right to the fill and flop. And since they are a little bit thicker, they're not going to be as floppy. I don't want to say they're not floppy. I mean, all bags are kind of floppy, but these are probably less floppy than most. And then as far as the fill, the Element here, it has Logic's control fill is what they call it. And basically it's just a mixed fill, but it's got a lot more rounds than the Notorious does. The Notorious is also a mixed fill, but we definitely feel way more flat in that bag than we do with the Element.
All right, what stood out to us on these bags, and I'll kind of start here for me, and it was really the forgiveness right away. The Notorious, going back to our original video, really surprised us at how well and forgiving it was.
Especially for it being, a fuller bag. Because normally a fuller bag is going to kick and not be very forgiving.
Yeah, so the forgiveness on the Notorious is awesome. And while the Element still is a fairly forgiving bag for what it is, it's just you're going to get a little more, movement and unexpected action on the board than you would see with the Notorious.
Yeah, but that's what stood out about it because it was active, and then that hybrid material kind of tamed that down a little bit.
It did tame it down a little bit, but still pretty active. You can do a lot of things with that Element.
Yeah, and another thing about Logic and the Element is that you can get the L, R, and H version, which is great because then you choose the one that suits your needs the most.
Right. And, we have the R version here, and the L version probably offers a little bit more forgiveness, I would think, than the R version.
Now, something that we didn't like about each series and the Notorious, mainly a lot of flats and discs and and then being fuller, it didn't have the drip that you'd want for it.
Right.
It was a good bag to throw. It was easy to throw, but it hung up more than probably what you would want. And then the Element, I mean, we said it's an active bag, so the thing that we didn't like about it is it is going to kick on you if you're not careful.
Yeah, that's my thought process on these bags exactly as well. The Logic, it's just a little bit more of a difficult bag for an average player to throw. More experienced players may lean more towards that Element. And yeah, the Notorious, I plugged several holes in a couple that I'm like, oh, as soon as the board hits, that's going to fall, and it just didn't fall.
The bulk of this comparison is our slide up. And before we start with that, we want to say, we started saying that these bags are very similar. So it's going to be hard for us to choose, which one's a little bit better than the other one in this area. And just because we say that one is better than the other, it doesn't mean that the other one isn't. They are still very similar bags. We're just trying to nitpick between the two.
Yeah, and that always comes down to the thrower. I mean, these bags have such minute differences, and so do us as throwers. So while I may be able to pick which one I like better or, which one I like least, then Craig's going to be able to, maybe be the opposite, and you may be different as well. And that's kind of why we're doing these comparisons, not really to say who's the better bag or which is the better bag, but just to highlight the differences. So if, you're looking for that minute difference, you know how to find it.
It can help you make your decision.
Right. With that, we're just going to call a quick timeout here and ask you guys again to give us a like and a subscribe. You know, we do put a lot of effort into making these videos, and we want to be able to keep doing it. So we appreciate if you take the time to hit those notifications, subscribe, and give us a like on this video.
Yeah, help our channel grow, and then that way, you know, it lets us know we're heading in the right direction.
First stop on our slide up is forgiveness, and the Notorious gets the nod here. Just I really think it's the difference in the fill, because you don't notice too much on the fast side difference, other than the Logic being a little bit slower. But when you're throwing, the slow side, your normal first two bags, there's a considerable amount of forgiveness in the Notorious.
And then whole bodiness on these, and I think we're going to give that to the Element.
Yeah.
Just because, the opposite of what he just said, there's more round beads. So there's a greater chance that this bag's going to, flop over and catch. And round beads don't want to settle. Imagine sticking two balls on top of each other.
Right.
If a little bit of that is hanging in the hole, rest of those beads have, a greater chance of falling, and then the bag falling down to the bottom of the hole.
Yeah, I didn't catch nearly as many, hole plugging situations with the Logic as I did the Notorious. Collectability, and both these bags are actually pretty good at collecting. I didn't really have too much issues with either one of them. I think the Notorious, when you're throwing on the slow side, maybe a slight nod. I think those flats sometimes don't really move out of the way as much as they can grab each other. But when you flip it over, if you're trying to collect a good block you had, and it's time to collect that, you need to flip it over to the fast side. It's kind of where the Logic really, I think wins, on the fast side of it when it comes to collecting. That 7-speed just gives you more control. You're less likely to at least go off the board and maybe hang a point on there still, versus, that 9-speed. If you don't really hit your spot on that push, as we all know, it's off the back of the board.
And sometimes we think that the fast fabrics, if you got a slow side down, fast fabric up, you flip it over, now you got fast side down, it could zoom right past the top of the fast side and then, miss that collect for you.
Yep.
On to capable shots. And before I threw the Element, I thought that the Notorious was probably, the best bag to teach someone how to cut and roll and do all that, because, it is full, and it was, pretty much active for being a forgiving bag. Yep. But then we threw the Element, and I really think that the control fill that's in there, that the more beads, it's going to be like a dream for someone that wants to learn how to roll and cut a bag.
Yeah, I feel more confident with the Logic, or I feel like I have to work harder when I need to make that cut shot with the Notorious versus the Logic. It just kind of seemed to happen without me, really putting too much thought into it, and that was kind of a big difference.
But this is a prime example where we're saying just because one does it, the other one doesn't, because the Notorious 100% will still do that for
absolutely.
you. It's just that the Element's probably a little bit easier.
Yep. All right, on to some final thoughts here. And first, we're going to talk about cost. And both of these are pretty reasonably priced. They're under the $100 mark. They're both right around $90 is their standard price on the website before you get any discounts. And for the quality of these bags, I think that's pretty reasonable.
Yeah, check around on Facebook, because they do have reps and they do have discount codes for both of the companies. Last is of our overall thoughts and if we recommend these bags. And normally I would definitely recommend the Notorious to a beginner, but ever since we had those Elements, my wife loves those bags. Like, she takes them to all the switches she goes to. That's probably one of her favorite bags, and she doesn't have the prettiest shots, but she tries and she enjoys it. So I don't know why she chooses the Element over the Notorious, but she does.
It's easy to recommend, for me to recommend these bags to really anybody from a beginner all the way to an advanced player, just because they can really do everything. You can do pretty much every capable shot. Depending on how beginning of a player and how flat their bag was, I would probably lean towards the Notorious for somebody that's still learning to throw a flat bag. Somebody that's throwing a pretty good flat bag already and starting to dip their toes into the capable shots, rolling, cutting, things like that, I would easily recommend the Logic to them.
All right, we just wanted to say, if you're going to be average at something, be average at cornhole.